The Zelvan homeworld, Lysara, glowed softly under the light of its twin suns. Its surface was covered in vast, shimmering oceans, tall crystal-like trees, and floating gardens that swayed gently with the wind. The Zelvans, a peaceful and delicate species, had lived for thousands of years in harmony with their environment. They were known for their intelligence, their art, and their careful study of the stars. They had never engaged in war. Their technology was advanced, but it focused on sustainability, communication, and exploration, not combat. Yet today, panic stirred in the heart of Lysara. An unknown threat had appeared on their borders, an enemy fleet far larger and more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. Their sensors detected vast ships bristling with weapons. The Zelvan Council debated desperately. "We cannot fight them," one counselor said, her voice trembling. "We are not built for war. We must ask for help." A decision was made to send an SOS, a simple message pleading for aid from any friendly species that could respond. They crafted the message carefully, polite and respectful, highlighting their peaceful nature and their urgent need. It was a call for guidance, defense, and protection, but in their calculations, the Zelvans made one small, almost innocent mistake. Their transmission, intended for the Interstellar Council, a coalition of gentle species known for diplomacy, was accidentally routed to a region far from their allies, a region dominated by humans. On the other side of the galaxy, in a sector labeled Deathworld Cluster by human explorers, the message flickered onto the communications console of the Earth Defense Vanguard. Captain Kale Draven, a man as rugged and unyielding as the worlds he had survived, leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowed at the incoming signal. "Command, you've got a distress call. Coordinates, uncharted. Species, unknown." The communications officer said. Kale grinned, a sharp, almost mischievous smile. "Show me," he said. The officer played the message, a holographic projection of serene, glowing beings on a beautiful planet. Their words were polite, desperate, and almost lyrical. They were asking for help. Kale tilted his head. They want help. Interesting. They must not know who they're calling. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Mara Tay, raised an eyebrow. "Captain, are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting we go," Kyle said simply. "They're asking for aid. That's all the reason I need. Besides, we've been cooped up in boring sectors for months. It's time someone reminded the galaxy why humans are called Deathworlders." The crew murmured in agreement. The human fleet was no stranger to hostile environments. They had survived frozen wastelands, volcanic storms, toxic atmospheres, and alien wildlife that could tear a man apart in seconds. Where others saw danger, humans saw opportunity. And Captain Kale led them with the kind of calm authority that made even the most reckless officers trust him. Preparations began immediately. The EDV fleet roared to life. Massive ships, reinforced and weaponized, emerged from hangars. Their hulls were scarred with the marks of previous battles, yet gleamed with a sharp efficiency. Kale's ship, the Vanguard Prime, led the fleet, cutting through space like a blade. As the fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, Kale studied the SOS again. He noticed something curious. The message spoke of fear, yet the creatures themselves were weak and fragile. They were not warriors. "Ah," he muttered. "They sent an SOS to the wrong species. This is going to be fun." Meanwhile, on Lysara, the Zelvans waited anxiously. They had expected the Council's allies, calm and careful diplomats, to arrive. Instead, the sensors picked up strange ships, unlike any they had ever seen. Massive, armored, and bristling with weapons, the fleet descended rapidly toward their planet. The Zelvans panicked, unsure if this was salvation or destruction. The first human scout ships arrived in orbit. They scanned the planet, measuring its atmosphere, gravity, and terrain. The results were easy for humans. They could survive here. Kale landed in a ceremonial holographic projection in front of the Zelvan Council, startling them with his boldness. "I am Captain Kale Draven of the Earth Defense Vanguard," he said, his voice deep and confident. "We received your distress. Call. Consider yourselves helped." The Zelvans exchanged nervous glances. "You are here to help?" one counselor stammered, her delicate features strained with anxiety. Kale smiled, but it was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of someone who thrived on challenges. "Yes, we help. But don't expect the usual polite methods. We do things differently." Their fear deepened. Humans, they realized, were not like anyone they had met before. The very word Deathworlder seemed to carry weight across the stars. Kyle and his crew were known for surviving and mastering planets that would kill ordinary species. Yet here they were, landing not with hesitation, but with decisiveness, intent, and power. Kyle wasted no time. "Show me the threat," he said. A holographic map appeared, displaying the approaching enemy fleet. The Zelvans watched as Kale's eyes scanned every detail. Ship size, weapon range, speed, formation. "Small fleet, overconfident," Kale muttered. "Nothing humans haven't dealt with before. We'll handle it." The Zelvans were stunned. "Handle it? You do not understand. They will destroy us." Kale's smile widened. "We understand more than you think. Sit back, stay safe, and watch humans do what humans do best. Survive, adapt, and conquer where others fail." The preparations were swift. Human engineers adapted the Zelvan defensive satellites for far more aggressive strategies, using terrain and orbital weapons in ways the Zelvans would never imagine. Soldiers trained the fragile Zelvans in basic evasive maneuvers, teaching them simple yet effective techniques to stay alive. As night fell on Lesara, Kyle walked along the landing platform of the Vanguard Prime. The twin suns cast long shadows across the crystal trees. The Zelvans watched in awe as humans moved confidently, completely at ease in an alien world. They realized for the first time that this species was entirely unpredictable, unstoppable in its own way. Hours passed quickly. Reports from the fleet indicated that the enemy ships were closing in, their formations rigid and aggressive. Kale called a meeting on the bridge, surrounded by officers and the few brave Zelvan volunteers. "We move at dawn," Kale said. "They think they can intimidate a weak species. They are wrong. We will show them what happens when Deathworlders respond to an SOS." Marate nodded. "Captain, they will underestimate us completely. Perfect conditions for a surprise." Kyle chuckled. "Exactly. Let them come. They have no idea what they're in for." As the first human battle shuttles prepared to launch, the Zelvans still trembled. Some hid behind crystal pillars, whispering prayers. Others studied the humans, trying to understand the strange species that thrived in chaos and danger. Kale noticed their fear but did not judge it. Fear was natural. Strength came from courage, in spite of fear. And humans, he knew, could turn fear into power in ways the galaxy had never seen. That night, the twin suns of Lesara set, casting long streaks of gold and purple across the sky. The human fleet rested, systems humming, soldiers checking weapons, engineers recalibrating shields. Kyle stood alone on the deck of Vanguard Prime, staring at the stars. "This is going to be an interesting day," he whispered. "They sent an SOS to the wrong species. Let's make sure they never regret it." And with that, humanity prepared to face a challenge unlike any the Zelvans had ever imagined. The mistake that brought humans here would turn into a legend, a story whispered across the stars. When humans respond, even the galaxy's most dangerous threats better watch out. By the time dawn broke over Lysara, the Earth Defense Vanguard was ready. Ships glimmered like black diamonds in orbit. Soldiers stood at the ready, and Captain Cale Draven smiled with the quiet confidence of a predator who knows the hunt is about to begin. The Zelvans, fragile and fearful, could only hope that this strange, powerful species called humans would truly save them, and perhaps change the course of their world forever. And somewhere, far across the stars, the enemy fleet continued its advance, unaware that the species they intended to intimidate was not only fearless, but unstoppable. The human fleet hovered above Lysara like a shadow stretching across the shimmering oceans. The Zelvans had never seen ships like these, hulking, dark, and powerful. Each vessel bristled with antennas, turrets, and thrusters that glowed faintly as they held position. From orbit, the planet looked serene, peaceful, and almost untouched. But the humans were not fooled by appearances. Cale Draven knew that even paradise could hide danger. "Captain," Lieutenant Marate said, pointing at the readings on the console. "Sensors show multiple disturbances near the equatorial region. Could be natural. Or enemy scouts." Cale leaned over, studying the data. "Either way, we go prepared. Stay sharp. I don't like surprises." The Zelvans watched the humans from the surface, their fear palpable. They had heard the stories of Deathworlders, species that could survive any environment, any danger. Yet seeing them in orbit, engines glowing and shields humming, was something else entirely. These were no ordinary saviors. These were predators in their element, calm, confident, and fully aware of their strength. Cale's fleet began its descent. Ships fired stabilizers, adjusting for Lysara's gravity, atmosphere, and magnetic fields. The humans moved with precision, landing in clusters on open plains near the crystal forests. The ground trembled under the weight of the ships, but nothing broke. Humans were used to planets that tried to kill them. The ground, the air, the wildlife, they had adapted to all. Cale exited the Vanguard Prime first. The landing platform opened with a metallic hiss, and his boots hit the ground. He looked around, taking in the tall crystal trees and floating gardens swaying gently above the surface. It was beautiful, peaceful, deceptively calm. The Zelvans approached cautiously. Their bodies were slender, almost fragile. Their faces glowed softly under the twin suns, and their eyes were wide with awe and fear. "Captain Draven," one spoke, voice trembling. We did not expect this." Cale studied them. "I know, you sent your SOS to the wrong species, but we are here now. Let's get to work." The Zelvans shuffled nervously. They had expected gentle advisors, not armed soldiers ready to descend. "Work?" one whispered. We thought you would help us with advice." Kyle's smile was calm but firm. "Advice is fine, but we don't just advise, we act. And when danger is near, action saves lives. Watch and learn." Engineers and soldiers spread out, setting up field stations, shields activated around the landing zone. Humans began scanning the forests and the nearby plains, identifying vantage points, natural hazards, and areas that could serve as defenses. The Zelvans watched in amazement. Every movement was deliberate, every scan methodical. Humans treated the planet as both home and battlefield at the same time. Suddenly, the fleet's sensors detected movement. Small alien scouts approached, moving cautiously through the dense crystal forests. Cale's tactical officer, Lieutenant Rin, pointed to the display. "Captain, enemy reconnaissance units. They're scouting your position." Cale's eyes gleamed. "Perfect. Time for a little demonstration." The human squads moved silently, using the terrain as cover. Soldiers vanished among the crystal trees, their armor blending with the reflections of sunlight. Drones hovered, invisible to the naked eye, transmitting live data back to the main fleet. When the enemy scouts moved too close, the humans set simple traps, energy nets, flash decoys, and small explosive charges designed to disable rather than destroy. The Zelvans gasped. They are not fighting them. They are controlling them, one whispered. And so quietly. Kyle knelt, adjusting a device on a drone. Force is useful, but control is better. Always control before you strike. Humans survive because we adapt. We improvise. Remember that. Hours passed. The humans had mapped key areas around the planet, identified natural choke points, and established defensive zones. Kale called the Zelvan Council to a meeting in one of the floating gardens. "You see this planet," Kale began, his voice carrying through a simple translator device. "It looks safe, beautiful, peaceful. But every paradise has its dangers. Your SOS brought humans here. That is fortunate for you. We don't just defend, we prepare." The Zelvan stared at him, wide-eyed. One counselor finally spoke. We do not understand. Your methods are violent." Kyle's smile was calm, almost amused. "Violent? Perhaps. Efficient? Definitely. You will see soon enough." At night, the twin suns of Lysara set, leaving soft purple light across the forests. The humans rested in tight formation, alert even in sleep. Kyle walked among them, checking equipment, offering advice, and sometimes just nodding to soldiers who had questions. Every member of his fleet was trained to survive, adapt, and fight in impossible conditions. Meanwhile, the Zelvans huddled together in the floating gardens, whispering nervously. They are not like anyone we have known," one said. "They do not fear, they do not hesitate, and they do not ask permission." Kale's voice echoed faintly from a nearby communications post. "Tomorrow, we start reconnaissance on the enemy fleet. I want every soldier ready. They underestimate us. That is our advantage." Dawn came, and with it, a new day of preparation. Kale's squads spread across the plains and forests, observing the enemy from hidden vantage points. The humans moved silently, marking enemy positions, calculating firing ranges, and identifying weak points. Every soldier knew their role. Every drone relayed critical information, and every weapon was ready to act. The Zelvans followed at a distance, still fearful, still unsure, but increasingly amazed. They see danger before it comes," one whispered. "They know what to do before it happens." Suddenly, the sensors picked up a massive energy signature in the outer orbit. Kale's tactical display lit up. "Enemy fleet incoming. Much larger than expected, but they're slow. That is fine. We can work with this." Marate leaned forward. "Captain, they will reach the planet in hours. Should we engage immediately?" Kale shook his head. "No. We let them come. They underestimate us. They think we are just a simple species, fragile, limited. That is the advantage of being a Deathworlder. We turn fear into strategy, chaos into victory." The humans moved into final positions, using natural terrain to hide orbital weapons, deploying drones for surveillance, and setting traps in the forests below. Kale surveyed the battlefield from the deck of Vanguard Prime. He imagined the enemy ships approaching, confident in their superiority, and smiled. "They have no idea what is waiting for them," he muttered. "This will be fun." Hours passed. The first enemy scouts entered Lysara's orbit. They were massive ships bristling with weapons but slow and predictable. Human sensors tracked every movement, transmitting data instantly to squads on the ground. When the scouts moved too close to the orbital defenses, humans deployed flash decoys, small energy pulses, and low-yield explosive traps. The enemy scrambled, in confusion, entirely unprepared for this response. The Zelvans watched in awe. They are fearless. They do not panic. And And they fight. Without even touching us, one said. Kale activated a small holographic display showing the enemy's formation. See this? He said. They rely on fear and intimidation. Humans rely on intelligence, strategy, and adaptability. Fear is useless against those who do not fear. That is why we survive. That is why we thrive. By nightfall, the humans had established control over the area surrounding their landing zones. Enemy scouts had been repelled, their formations disrupted, and Lysara itself was prepared for the coming attack. Kyle called another meeting with the Zelvans. Your SOS brought humans to you, Kyle said. That was a mistake on your part, but a fortunate one. You will see what humans can do when faced with danger. Do not worry, we will protect you, and by the time the main fleet arrives, they will regret ever thinking they could intimidate. A Deathworlder species. The Zelvans, exhausted but inspired, nodded. We trust you, one whispered. We have no choice but to trust. Kyle's smile was calm. Good. Trust is important, but even more important is preparation. Rest now. Tomorrow, we begin showing them what happens when humans respond to an SOS. As the twin suns rose once again over Lysara, the human fleet stood ready. Soldiers checked weapons, drones buzzed in orbit, and Captain Kale Draven walked along the edge of the crystal forests. The planet looked calm, serene, but underneath it, humans had turned it into a fortress, and somewhere far away the enemy fleet continued its advance, unaware that the species they had intended to intimidate was already waiting, ready, prepared, and completely unstoppable. The twin suns of Lysara had just begun their ascent, casting a soft gold and purple light over the crystal forests and floating gardens. From the horizon, the humans could see movement in space, small at first, like stars, then growing larger, revealing the bulk of the enemy fleet. Kale Draven stood on the deck of the Vanguard Prime, scanning the approaching armada. The enemy ships were larger than the scouts they had encountered the day before. Each vessel was bristling with weapons, and their formations were tight, disciplined, and arrogant. They assumed the Zelvans were weak, and that humans, if they were even present, were merely a curiosity, incapable of real resistance. Marate leaned over Kale's shoulder. Captain, the main fleet is bigger than we anticipated. They will reach the planet in hours. Kale smiled. Perfect. Let them come. They are confident, predictable, and impatient. Those are mistakes they will regret. Human engineers were already working at a rapid pace. Orbital defenses were activated, energy barriers shimmering around key zones. On the ground, soldiers and drones took up hidden positions, using the terrain, forests, and crystal formations as natural cover. Every move was planned, yet flexible, just as humans always did on death worlds. The Zelvans, still fearful, watched from safe distances. Why are they not panicking? One whispered. We would be terrified if we saw this fleet coming. They do not panic, another replied. They are fearless, or they survive differently. Kale overheard the whispers through the translator channels. He chuckled softly. Humans thrived in conditions that would kill most species. Fear was natural, yes, but humans had learned to turn fear into advantage, into action, into strategy. That was why they were called Deathworlders. The first wave of enemy ships entered Lysara's outer orbit. They were scouts, smaller vessels sent ahead to gauge defenses. Human sensors picked them up immediately, transmitting positions to every squad and drone on the planet. Kyle's voice came over the comms. Engage! Harass them! Force them to reveal their strategy! Soldiers activated stealth drones, which moved silently among the enemy ships. Energy nets launched from hidden orbital cannons tangling enemy engines. Low-yield pulses created sudden bursts of light, confusing sensors and making the enemy think the defenses were far stronger than they appeared. The Zelvans gasped. They are not attacking to kill. They are teaching. They are controlling the situation. Kyle's tactical display lit up. That is exactly right. We shape the battlefield before it reaches us. We control the fight, and the enemy loses confidence before we even fire real weapons. Hours passed. The enemy scouts were repelled, disoriented, and some retreated. Kyle studied the readings. They think they can regroup and try a different approach. Fine, let them. Their arrogance is our advantage. Marate pointed at the approaching main fleet. Captain, they are closing in fast. They will reach orbital range in less than 3 hours. Kale grinned. Then we show them why humans survive where others die. Initiate full planetary defense protocols. Every squad, every drone, every ship, ready to strike on my mark. On the planet's surface, human squads moved quickly. Soldiers set traps in the crystal forests, energy barriers, trip mines, and automated turrets hidden beneath the foliage. Drones zipped silently through the air, transmitting real-time data on enemy positions. Even the Zelvans were taught simple evasive maneuvers, guided by human soldiers. They were weak, fragile, and inexperienced in combat, but humans made them effective enough to survive in a fight. Kale walked among the squads, checking weapons and positions. Remember, he told them, this is not about brute force. It is about adaptation. We turn the enemy's assumptions against them. They think we are weak. They think we will panic. They are wrong. We survive. We adapt, and we conquer. As the enemy fleet entered orbital range, human orbital cannons activated. Pulses of energy surged outward, forcing enemy ships to adjust course. Their formations wavered. They had expected easy victory, but humans never played by expectations. Kale's tactical officer, Lieutenant Rin, spoke over the comms. Captain, they are regrouping. They are trying to attack a weak point in the northern approach. Good, Kale said. Let them try. That is where we set the trap. In the forests below, soldiers lay hidden among towering crystal trees. Energy turrets hummed silently, waiting for the first sign of the enemy's approach. Drones hovered above, ready to guide humans and Zelvans alike. The enemy had numbers, but humans had intelligence, adaptability, and preparation. When the first enemy ships moved into the northern approach, they triggered the trap. Hidden turrets fired, drones created illusions of larger forces, and energy pulses disrupted their navigation systems. Ships collided, misfired, or were forced to retreat. Human squads on the ground took advantage of confusion, using small, precise strikes to disable enemy weapons. The Zelvans watched in awe. They are small in number, yet they control the battle, one whispered. They are incredible. Kale monitored the battlefield from Vanguard Prime. They think this is just an attack, he muttered. It is not. This is teaching. Every move, every strike is calculated. We control the outcome, not the enemy. Hours passed, and the main fleet hesitated. They could not predict human strategy. Every time they attempted an aggressive move, humans had anticipated it and countered, effectively. Orbital defenses, ground traps, and drones created a network of control that made the enemy fleet feel trapped. Kale activated the next phase of the plan. Prepare boarding pods, he said. We are going to show them what happens when humans fight in environments they cannot control. Mara, take your squad, move to the largest enemy ship, disable their systems quietly. Marate nodded. Her squad of elite soldiers moved with precision. Using stealth pods, they approached the enemy vessel, avoiding detection. Within moments, they had disabled key systems, causing confusion and panic aboard the enemy ship. The rest of the fleet, seeing their flagship falter, hesitated. Kyle smiled. And that is how humans turn fear into victory. On Lysara, the Zelvans realized the truth. These humans were not just strong. They were a force of nature. They survived. where others would fail, adapted to conditions that would kill most species, and fought with intelligence, precision, and courage that inspired awe. They are not just saviors, one whispered. They are unstoppable, Kale's voice echoed across the battlefield. This is what happens when Deathworlders respond to an SOS, not negotiation, not diplomacy, action, intelligence, and strength, beyond imagination. As night fell, the enemy fleet retreated temporarily, regrouping and reassessing. Humans used the lull to strengthen defenses, repair damage, and prepare for the next wave. Kale gathered his officers. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers, he said. They are wrong. They think our presence is intimidation. It is not. It is preparation. And tomorrow, when they attack again, they will face humans in full control of the battlefield. They will learn that numbers do not matter. Strategy, courage, and adaptation do. That is what makes us Deathworlders. The Zelvans, exhausted but inspired, whispered among themselves. We never imagined a species could survive so much. And yet they are still calm, still planning, still ready. Kyle walked alone along the deck of Vanguard Prime, staring at the stars. Somewhere beyond Lysera, the enemy fleet nursed wounds, unaware that humans were not just surviving. They were thriving. That human ingenuity, courage, and determination would turn what seemed like an impossible fight into a victory. This, Kale said quietly, is why humans survive. This is why the galaxy fears underestimating us. We do not just fight, we adapt, we overcome, we win. And so, as Lysara slept under the twin suns, the humans prepared. The enemy fleet would return, confident and arrogant. They would assume they could win with sheer size and firepower. But humans, the Deathworlders, would prove them wrong. For the first time, the Zelvans began to believe. These strange, powerful beings had not only answered their SOS, they had brought hope, courage, and a force they could never have imagined. And far across space, the enemy fleet did not yet understand the true challenge waiting for them. The twin suns of Lysara were low in the sky, casting long shadows across the crystal forests. From orbit, the human fleet glimmered like dark jewels against the soft light of the planet. Kale Draven stood on the bridge of the Vanguard Prime, eyes fixed on the enemy ship slowly approaching. They think they've recovered from yesterday, Kale said, voice calm and steady. They are wrong. Marate leaned over the tactical display. Captain, the enemy fleet is larger than before. Their formations are tighter. They've learned from their mistakes. Kyle smiled. Good. Let them think they have learned something. Confidence is their weakness. Human engineers worked tirelessly in orbit and on the surface. Orbital cannons hummed, drones zipped between ships and through the forests, and soldiers hid behind crystal formations, ready to strike. The Zelvans watched in awe, their fear mixed with growing admiration. These humans were not just strong, they were unstoppable in their methodical, fearless approach. Kale gathered his officers. This time we take the fight to them. We don't wait, we control, we adapt, we survive where others die. That is what makes us Deathworlders. Remember, they underestimate us. That will not last long. The first enemy ships entered Lysera's outer orbit, firing sporadic energy pulses to test the humans' defenses. The humans responded immediately. Energy nets ensnared several enemy vessels, forcing them to slow down. Drones created decoy ships, making the enemy waste firepower on shadows. Small, precise strikes disabled key systems, sending some ships spinning helplessly in space. On the surface, human squads were ready. Automated turrets hidden among the crystal trees fired in coordinated bursts. Energy barriers lit up, forcing enemy boarding units into traps. Soldiers moved like shadows, striking quickly and retreating before the enemy could react. The Zelvans whispered among themselves. They do not panic. They do not hesitate. And yet, every move is perfect. Kyle watched the battlefield calmly. Control before force. Intelligence before brute strength. That is how humans survive and thrive. Hours passed. The enemy fleet tried to regroup, but every approach had been anticipated. Kyle had studied their movements, predicted their strategies, and prepared countermeasures for every scenario. When enemy ships attempted a direct assault on orbital cannons, stealth pods struck, disabling engines and creating chaos. Marate smiled. Captain, they're completely confused. They don't know how to respond. Kyle nodded. Good. Let's make sure they never do. On the ground, humans moved through the forests, taking advantage of the terrain. Crystal formations reflected sunlight, creating illusions of larger forces. Energy pulses masked the humans' movements, and drones guided Zelvans safely through the forests. Even the fragile aliens learned quickly, mimicking basic maneuvers and avoiding danger. A squad of human soldiers moved toward a partially damaged enemy ship that had strayed too close to the planet's surface. Using grappling pods and silent propulsion units, they boarded the vessel, disabling weapons and communication systems. The enemy crew panicked, unable to understand how such a small force could create so much disruption. Kyle activated the next phase. Now we push them further. Mara, take your squad and target the flagship. Rin, coordinate orbital strikes to create a corridor. Every move precise. Every strike lethal. The humans moved like shadows, striking in perfect coordination. Boarding teams disabled multiple vessels, orbital cannons created controlled explosions, and drones misdirected enemy ships into traps. The fleet's confidence crumbled. They had expected an easy fight, but humans never played by expectations. The Zelvans, hiding among floating gardens and crystal trees, could not believe what they were seeing. They are not just fighting, one whispered. They are rewriting the rules of battle. Kyle's voice echoed over the comms. This is what happens when humans fight on a death world. We adapt, we survive, we overcome, and we win. Hours turned into a tense day of battle. Enemy ships tried desperate maneuvers, splitting forces, attempting ambushes, and relying on speed to outflank the humans. But every move was countered. Humans had turned the environment, both in space and on the planet, into a weapon. The forest, the crystal formations, the orbital energy fields, all were used with precision. Finally, the enemy flagship moved into the trap Kale had prepared. Hidden energy pulses, combined with precise boarding teams and orbital strikes, disabled its weapons and engines. The rest of the enemy fleet hesitated, unsure whether to continue the assault or retreat. Kyle turned to Marate. Signal them. Let them know this fight is over. Humans survive. Humans win. Deathworlders prevail. A loud signal pulsed across space, a message both warning and declaration. Retreat. Humans control this battlefield. Any further action will result in complete defeat. The enemy fleet, recognizing that they had underestimated humans, began to retreat. Ships limped back into hyperspace, leaving Lysara safe for now. The Zelvans emerged from hiding, awe written across their faces. They have defeated them, one whispered. They are more than we imagined. Kale walked among them. We didn't just defeat them. We controlled the fight, protected your world, and showed that humans survive where others fail. That is what happens when Deathworlders respond to an SOS. The Zelvans slowly approached the humans, curiosity, replacing fear. You are incredible, one said. We never imagined a species could survive so much. And yet you remain calm and strong. Kale nodded. Humans adapt. Humans survive. Humans thrive in danger. That is who we are, and now your world is safe. Marate surveyed the battlefield. Captain, the fleet is gone. We hold Lysara, but they will return. We should be ready. Kale smiled. Of course they will return, but they will never be ready. Humans always turn. Disadvantage into advantage. That is why we survive where others die. Today was just a demonstration. Engineers and soldiers began repairing damages, reactivating orbital defenses and restoring energy fields. The Zelvans joined, learning quickly under human guidance. They were fragile, inexperienced in war, but humans had shown them the importance of preparation, strategy, and courage. That night, Lysara's twin suns set in a blaze of gold and purple. Humans gathered on the surface and on the deck of the Vanguard Prime. They had survived, adapted, and overcome. They had protected a peaceful species, defeated a larger enemy fleet, and turned the tide of battle without losing a single human life. Kyle walked among the squads, pride in his voice. Remember this. Strategy, courage, and intelligence always win over raw numbers. Fear is a tool, not a weakness. Adaptation is power, and humans are unstoppable. The Zelvans, exhausted but inspired, whispered among themselves. We never knew a species could be so perfect in survival. They are extraordinary. Kyle's eyes swept the horizon. Tomorrow, we consolidate. We strengthen defenses. We teach the Zelvans more about survival, strategy, and adaptability. And if the enemy returns, they will face a planet and a species they cannot defeat. As Lysara's twin moons rose, casting soft silver light across forests and floating gardens, the humans rested briefly. Their vigilance never faltered, their courage never wavered. The legend of Deathworlders had grown once again. This time, among a peaceful species who would never forget the day humans saved their world. And somewhere in the stars, the enemy fleet retreated, unaware that they had just witnessed what happens. When a species built for survival, adaptation, and intelligence responds to a threat. The galaxy was beginning to learn a hard truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. The twin suns of Lysara rose once more, casting warm golden light across the crystal forests and floating gardens. The planet was quiet now, almost serene, but the scars of battle lingered. The Zelvans moved cautiously, tending to broken structures, and restoring their environment under human guidance. Though they were fragile, they had survived the impossible thanks to the humans, the Deathworlders. Captain Kale Draven stood on the deck of Vanguard Prime, surveying the planet below. Soldiers moved through the forests, repairing energy turrets and recalibrating drones. Engineers worked to restore the orbital defenses, making sure Lysara would remain safe against any future threats. Captain, Marate said, standing beside him, the enemy fleet is gone, at least for now. They will probably regroup, and possibly return. Kale's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Let them come. If they return, they will face a planet that is prepared, a species that is ready, and humans who know no fear. That is the advantage of being a Deathworlder. The Zelvans, slowly gathering around the humans, watched in awe. They were fragile, gentle, and untrained in combat. But the humans had taught them more than just survival. They had taught them courage, strategy, and adaptability. One counselor stepped forward, her voice trembling. Captain Draven, we cannot thank you enough. Your species saved us from certain destruction. Kale smiled. You didn't just call for help, you made a mistake. You sent an SOS to the wrong species, but it worked. We are here. We adapted. We survived. And we won. That is how humans respond. Another Zelvan, younger and more curious, stepped forward. But how do you survive where others fail? How can your species face so much danger? And yet, and yet remain calm. Kale crouched slightly, looking at the Zelvan. We don't survive by being invincible. We survive by adapting, by learning, by thinking faster than danger. Humans face death and turn it into life. Fear is a tool, not a weakness. And intelligence, courage, strategy, those are our weapons. The Zelvans listened, captivated. They had seen humans in action, controlled the battlefield, turned the impossible into victory, and protected an entire world without hesitation. The lessons were more than tactical. They were inspirational. Marate addressed the Zelvans as, well, it is not magic. It is preparation, observation, and teamwork. Every human knows how to survive. And now, you have learned a little too. You survived because we guided you. You survived because you believed. That is what makes humans, humans. The Zelvans began to nod, some even trying simple exercises humans had taught them, how to dodge, hide, and observe. They were far from warriors, but the seeds of resilience had been planted. Kale turned back to the horizon. We will stay for a few more days. Teach, repair, train. And then we leave. But you will never forget what happened here. And neither will the galaxy. Days passed. Humans worked tirelessly with the Zelvans. They repaired damaged structures, reinforced defenses, and trained the Zelvans in basic survival strategies. Drones taught reconnaissance, and soldiers demonstrated precision maneuvers. Even the most timid Zelvans learned to avoid danger and adapt to challenges. Kale oversaw it all, walking among the Zelvans, answering questions, and sometimes just observing. He watched them grow braver each day, their fear slowly replaced by understanding and confidence. One evening, as the twin suns set, Kyle and Marate stood on a hill overlooking the forests. Ships in orbit shimmered against the darkening sky. "Captain," Mara said quietly, "they are learning faster than I expected. They might never be warriors, but they are becoming survivors." Kyle nodded. "Exactly. That is what matters. Strength is not just physical. It is courage, adaptability, and the will to endure. They have learned that. They have seen it. And now they will carry it forward." Meanwhile, the Zelvans gathered for a ceremony to honor the humans. It was simple, unlike any human celebration, but full of gratitude. Soft, glowing lights floated above the gathering, and the council spoke words of thanks and admiration. Kyle accepted their respect with quiet humility. "We didn't do this for glory," he said. "We did it because it was the right thing to do, because survival, courage, and action matter, and because when someone calls for help, humans respond." The Zelvans, inspired and awed, realized that they had not only survived the battle, they had witnessed a species that embodied the ultimate form of resilience. Humans had turned a simple SOS into a display of intelligence, strategy, and courage that the galaxy would remember. As the days passed, humans completed their work. Orbital defenses were at peak efficiency, ground positions were fortified, and the Zelvans had gained basic knowledge of survival tactics. Kale gathered his officers for one final briefing. "The enemy fleet may return," Kale said, "but it will be different now. They know that humans are here. They know the consequences of underestimating us. Lysara is safe because humans respond to threats, and that is what will make our legend grow." Marate smiled. "Captain, they will remember this. All the worlds they control, all the species they influence, they will speak of humans differently after today." Kyle's eyes narrowed, thinking beyond Lysara. "Yes, the galaxy is beginning to learn. The human way is not just survival, it is mastery of any challenge. Deathworlders do not retreat. Deathworlders adapt, and Deathworlders always prevail." The day of departure arrived. Human ships lifted off smoothly, engines humming with power and efficiency. The Zelvans gathered to watch them go, their eyes wide with gratitude, admiration, and awe. One counselor spoke softly, voice trembling. "Captain Draven, you have not only saved our world, you have taught us something we never knew. You, humans, you are extraordinary." Kale nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. "Remember what you have learned. Adapt, prepare, survive, and never forget. When humans respond, even the impossible becomes possible." The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving Lysara peaceful and whole. The Zelvans stood among the crystal trees, reflecting on the incredible events that had unfolded. Their homeworld had been saved, their people had survived, and their understanding of strength had been forever changed. And far across the stars, whispers began to spread. Tales of humans, Deathworlders, who arrived at the wrong SOS and turned a hopeless situation into triumph. Stories of their intelligence, courage, and unmatched adaptability began to reach other species. They were no longer just a legend. They were a force the galaxy would never forget. Kale Draven stood at the helm of the Vanguard Prime, watching the stars streak by. "They will learn," he said quietly. "Every species, every world, every threat. They will learn that humans survive where others fail. They underestimate us at their own risk." Marate stood beside him. "And Lysara?" Kale's gaze softened. "Lysara will thrive. Its people are stronger now, not warriors, but survivors. That is enough. And one day, they may even teach others what we have shown them." The fleet continued through hyperspace, moving on to new adventures, new worlds, and new challenges. But the legend of Deathworlders had grown, proof that humanity, even when called by mistake, could save worlds, inspire species, and survive the impossible. In the quiet crystal forests of Lysara, the Zelvans looked up at the sky, remembering the humans who had arrived at their greatest moment of need. They would tell stories of courage, strategy, and survival. They would never forget the day the wrong SOS brought the right species, the Deathworlders, to their world. And somewhere across the galaxy, the legacy of humanity grew. The SOS had been a mistake, but it had created a legend of humans. The Deathworlders who arrive, adapt, survive, and prevail, no matter the odds.